Almost live.
Corporate career responsibility is a call to all experts and consultants to give back their time, skills, knowledge, and expertise to mentor and nurture future industry leaders. Are you passionate in nurturing future industry leaders and professionals who will take enterprise to a higher level? Corporate Career Academy, together with Student TV, is giving you an opportunity to share your knowledge, skills, and mentor students and young professionals.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining our discussion this afternoon. For those who are watching us from across the world, the students and young professionals, welcome to our yet another session of Corporate Career Academy. Today we are focusing on career readiness and how we can help the incoming professionals and students to gain skills that are relevant to the industry. With us is Njeri Jomo, who is now going to discuss with us. She has a wide range of experience, having worked with students. She has worked with, she has now 19 years experience in the corporate world, having seen a lot of experience in business development, digital innovation, and all that. Njeri has also participated in the presidential unit that was dealing with giving skills, the digital skills to students, so she's more familiar with students. She'll be able to take us through the discussions around how do you prepare yourself for the corporate world. Again, looking at what are the digital skills, what are the innovations in the financial services industry. This session is more important to all of us, especially not only that those who are in the insurance industry, but all in the service industry and across. We want to appreciate the university that is participating in this session today. My name is Livingston Makori. I'm part of the Corporate Career Academy. We are bringing you experts in different areas of study so that you are able to learn what happens in the corporate world and how do you prepare for the corporate world. Without much ado, I wish to welcome Njeri. Njeri, welcome to our session today. This is the Corporate Career Academy, and thank you for coming to talk to our viewers. Thank you very much. Yeah, welcome, Njeri.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Livingstone, and good afternoon, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be here and the opportunity to be here. So thank you, Livingstone and the Corporate Career Academy for this invite. I like the introduction about being passionate about supporting young people, because really all of us at one point have been where you are and have wanted and would have liked someone to hold our hand. So it's really this conversation, like many other, is one I'm really looking forward to. So as Livingstone has mentioned, today I'll be speaking about quite a number of things, but I'll narrow down on business development and corporate readiness. And why business development for me is, regardless of your area of study, is essentially business exists to be able to make a profit or generate an income. And this does not happen until you understand business development. So I'm hoping that during our interaction this afternoon, that we're going to learn something. Some aspects will be pretty obvious. We'll just be looking to consolidate them for all of us. And we'll also speak a bit on corporate readiness. So I'll jump right in. And what I'll request is, throughout the discussion, please post your questions. I want to be able to respond to them even as we move on. And hopefully we'll be able to have all of them addressed as we go. On the screen, and essentially, as I said, today we'll be talking about business development and corporate readiness. And as we said, business development is really the creation of long-term value for any organization. And that's from its customers, its markets, and its relationships. And as I said, even if you're studying towards being an actuary, or whether you're looking towards going the insurance field, or whatever area of business development is at the very heart of the sustenance of that organization. Even if it is a doctor, their customers are going to be the people that they're going to be engaging in, and markets and the relationships they then build that then determine whether they sustainably are going to be in business. And business development is a discipline that is important. It's not just sales. And I think people assume business development is selling. It is not just sales. It goes beyond sales. It is an entire discipline, and I'm hoping this morning we can attempt to unpack and bring in different aspects. We'll touch on innovation even as we go, as well as how digital then makes this process more effective and efficient for all of us. So I've applied two aspects of being able to show a use case for markets and how you then be able to define markets. And in this particular scenario, I'm being able to show where we've sort of looked at what about when you want to target a market and you're saying, what is the size of the market? What is the potential in this market? And a market makes sense when you look at it in terms of size, future potential, and where you can see possibilities of it being able to be a segment you can grow with. Now, here I have scoped one particular segment, and this would be perhaps what is considered youth. Youth, as at the last study, we were able to note that about 75% of the Kenyan population, or rather of the population here, as indicated in this image, are youth. So for any brand looking at it, they think, I want to develop a relationship with the youth segment because one, they are quite sizable. Two, they have an upward potential in that today, while someone is perhaps 18 years old and still in campus or otherwise, tomorrow this person has potential to have a strong, sustainable income, and therefore a customer I want to be looking at. Anybody who's talking about digital is essentially talking about this segment as digital natives. Why? Digital sits naturally within what they do. They are completely at home with a phone or a digital gadget. They are extremely social. Ideally, they work easily with referrals online, and essentially they're very oriented with multimedia. But the beauty about this segment, they're not asking you for paper-based engagements. So if it's a brand looking at, or a company or any of us who will be looking at a business, we are then thinking, if youth is my market, this is why they are attractive to me. And therefore, everything that I'm going to do to support this customer segment is then going to be done very digitally because they're naturally at home in that area. When we come from markets, we then really go into customer segments. And I've attempted to look at today two companies that have done this really well. We look at Safaricom. When they look at the entire market, they then go down and say, what segments are attractive to us? And then that informs their approach and their go-to market and everything else I'll be speaking to. Safaricom picks out four interesting segments. Today, Safaricom segments their market into discerning professionals, into hustlers, into youth, and the masses. Coca-Cola actually is quite interesting. They then go further. Coca-Cola go a bit further. Age seems to be an area they are particularly keen on, and then this determines how they position their products and so on, and which is why you see them in the universities and schools when they're looking to grow their market share. But even when you look at age, beyond the younger customer base, they also go for an older customer base with their products like the Diet Coke. And when you have identified your market and narrowed down to customer segments, you want to take it a step further and be able to define personas from these customer segments. And all of this is going to add up as to why this is so critical for business development. You need to identify your market, then define the customer segments that you're interested in that market, and then go down and define personas. Here we have defined a persona named Maria, and we've tried to define who Maria is, what she does, what she interacts with, and this enables us to then identify our marketing touch points, our sales touch points, so that then we can really be able to say that we are going to be able to generate value from Maria or any other customer that we identify. So once we are done with our markets and identifying our customer segments down to personas, we then go to our product strategy, because whatever product I'm going to attach to my customer is really tied to a need. What need do they have? And understanding their need is extremely critical. But from experience, while you may already have personas and really excellent customer segments, which are really defined by research, often the first product you take to market will be what we consider a minimum viable product. It has a lot of assumptions. It has a lot of assumptions on features. It has a lot of assumptions on what the customer needs. But once you take it to the market, you then begin to be able to see what customers really need. And that's why I'm saying that it's a different conversation when the product is being developed, and a different conversation 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the line once you have customer feedback. And therefore, customer strategy will involve developing the product with customer feedback, coming up with a minimum viable product, taking that product to market, and then incorporating that customer feedback continuously until you then have a product that you then can consider the final product. And this product is then now what you drive aggressively to market. So we've come down from saying, what are our markets? What are our customer segments? What product is it? We have refined the product from a minimum viable product to now a final product that we can take to market. What is interesting about products is being able to identify two concepts. A product can be a technical product or a commercial product. Whatever we take to the customer is the commercial product, and I'll be able to elaborate that in a few. For the actuaries in the room, when you give me a product and tell me this is an insurance product with a savings feature and say and a protection feature, what you have just defined to me is a technical product. What I then call it, how I define it, and how I structure it based on customer need is now what is considered the commercial product. What we take to market for successful uptake should be the commercial product and not the technical product. And therefore, which is why the next phase becomes extremely important. Regardless of whatever product you have at whatever level or whatever profession that you have, the go-to-market process becomes the most critical aspect of whether the product is a success or a failure. Remember, we already defined the market, we already defined the customer segment, we already have also come up with the products and said these are products that now we know these customers would need, and now the product really needs to go into market. I will not go into some of these components because I know I'm speaking to scholars and some of them you're really familiar with, but what I will highlight heavily on is the customer acquisition stage. Because as you'll note in our conversations, most of the others are issues you've already seen. We've segmented market. When you come to product, of course, by the time you're defining the product, you have a price. You're going to determine how you want to be able to sell it. So we'll go into customer acquisition and also touch on some aspects of distribution just to help you be able to drive up uptake. And this is extremely important, especially for anybody who's a young professional in this session, but also anybody who's planning on going into either business or corporate, because this is the real moment of truth when the numbers match up, when the business is actually able to make money. When it comes to being able to determine the distribution, the kind of product that you have and the type of market you defined then helps you determine the kind of distribution you want to employ. I often hear people say, I'm going to sell a product digitally. That is great. In some cases, you will still use a face-to-face kind of conversation with physical channels. At times, if it is a fast-moving consumer good, you're then going to identify existing merchandisers or stores that then already sell this kind of products and so on. But the product you have and the customer segments you defined and the market you identified will have a heavy impact on distribution. If you go back to our initial slides when we spoke about the youth segment, we already identified that the youth are very comfortable within a digital environment. So when I then come down to identifying the ideal distribution, the natural selection for distribution channel for that segment would then be digital, because already they are comfortable doing things digitally and already very familiar and are digital natives. So then I'll be able to select that. But if my product is targeting a customer who's in the age range of 40, 50 years old, then digital does not become a natural selection for me, because I then have to go back and see what is it about this customer segment. Where is it that they spend most of their time? Are they comfortable on phone, or are they still the kind of person who still expects some physical evidence that a transaction has happened? And then that helps me determine what channel I want to be able to distribute my product on. The promotion and advertising aspects that I choose, again, are tied to the customer, which is why, as you will see, we were starting at the beginning. If we came and started at product or channel or whatever else we were starting, we would miss it, because we need insights right down from the market we are going to be targeting, and the customer segments and the personas that we are going to be working with, and the processes and so on. I now want to spend a bit of time on customer acquisition, because the customer is whoever who is the person with the money and the person we want to be able to get into the business. And there's a process that then is involved in how they arrive at the decision as to whether to take on my product or not. And this process is extremely critical to bear in mind as we go to market, because it then informs whether we are successful or not. The first stage is often awareness. How do they get to know about your product? How do they get to know about this product that you have? How do you get them to develop an interest in this product? So in whatever you're doing, you want to be able to say, where do they find awareness? Will they find information from a friend? Is the awareness going to be from radio? Is awareness going to be from a website? How do you want to create awareness on the product? And this then is also is going to inform where you promote your product, because you want them to be able to become aware and discover your product. Once they are aware of it, how do you make sure they have an interest? How do you make sure they then feel, I need to do something, or that sounds interesting, I need to find out some more information, or that sounds interesting, I need to do something about it. You want them to develop interest. So what about your communication? What about your advertising? What about your promotion tactics makes them get interested in wanting to find out more? Is it that, remember, you had already done some needs evaluation when you're coming down from customer segments? Is it that something you said in your campaign content spoke to their interest? Is it something you said that really resonated strongly with them? Or is it something about it that was one of those things that you can't avoid? And I like to say, my children all the time speak about, every time we pass a Coca-Cola billboard, they want to buy soda. Now let's go through this. Awareness. I get to see the billboard. They're suddenly aware, oh, there's Coca-Cola. But the way the ad is structured and the way that it just looks, it has emotion in it. It makes you feel like it's really a hot day. And if I took that Coca-Cola, it will solve all my problems. So you want to be able to get the customer, regardless of the product you have, down to the level of interest. You want them to be evaluating, and when they come to evaluate, they're comparing you, and they're comparing you to, fine, if I need it, what do I have another alternative? Is there something else I could do with it? And you want to give them adequate information to evaluate your product favorably. So what is it that when you look at the alternatives, and alternatives sometimes are not just within your industry, how do you compare as a viable alternative? I'll use the example, for example, of funeral plans, which is something that we do. When you think about buying a funeral plan, when we look at it from an insurance context, we then say perhaps, yes, they could buy a funeral plan from any other company, but also welfare groups become an alternative. Perhaps if they had a WhatsApp group and saved up, it could still achieve the same objective. Or if they had an Mchanga account, people will still contribute and they will still achieve the same objective. So how do you, how much information have you given them that enables them to, when they come to evaluating your product, as to whether they need it, do they need it now, and comparing it against alternatives, that then helps them to be able to purchase your product or evaluate favorably. And when they are now ready to make the decision, making that effortless for them to be able to sign up. And when we do speak, when we often hear about digital, often the assumption is that digital is a solution on its own. But my view is digital begins to play a critical part in stages such as this. For example, when the customer is at that moment of wanting to sign up or is ready, it then creates efficiencies that then are attractive differentiators when a client is choosing between brands or different products that are in the market. And then beyond that, making sure that you're able to retain this customer, making sure they become an advocate for for your business. What is their experience beyond that point that makes them be able to talk about you? Now, what I speak to is a continuous engaging process for any person in business today. Whether you are in corporate or whether you are running your own business, this is always a continuous conversation. Unfortunately, missing out any of these steps often will mean that you have a lower conversion rate or have fewer customers because one of these aspects has not been taken care of. Now, I want to move on. And I'll tie this into the aspects of digital financial services and narrow it down more to insurance. Again, as I've said a few minutes ago about the digital craze and digital buzz has been big. Everyone is talking about digital. Everyone is talking about digital. But when we then come down to asking ourselves, what will digital help us do? Digital, in my view, is an enabler. It's an enabler for efficiency, whether it's efficiency in how we we get customers on board, whether it's efficiencies in how we serve our customers, whether it's efficiencies in how we retain these customers. But as you can see, it's tying back to everything we were doing. Digital is going to help us narrow down to markets through AI and analytics and being able to get adequate data to be able to size our markets accurately. Digital is going to help us because when we come down to our customer segments, it's going to help us analyze them accurately with the right level of data. But it's also going to help us define our personas right down to touch points and how when they're ready to onboard, how we onboard them. Digital is going to help us because when you are working on your product strategy, specifically where you keep needing to get feedback when you're testing the product and come back and get the customer feedback, ideate, digital then continues to again become an enabler throughout the entire journey. And when it is at go-to-market, making sure that you have, by far, digital happens to be one of the cheapest ways to create awareness if you do compare the cost that you're going to spend on digital campaigns versus on ground. And as they go through interest and evaluate your options and be able to onboard, digital then becomes a very critical enabler for the entire business development process. So for me and in my experience, digital is a critical enabler if you're going to be successful in today's world in business development for taking care of each of those stages. And in one of the critical areas, I've said a company or a business is not in business until you have customers on board. And I'll bring this down to insurance. When we look at the typical insurance landscape today, we have quite a number of sales channels that a customer can onboard on. But we then begin to see where digital begins to play in. So today, we still have your typical agents, brokers. Digital is in there. Then you have your peer-to-peer sales where I refer my friend, and you have the insurtechs that then come in that come in from time to time, trying to create more flexible solutions. But when you look at the heart of it and be able to ask, where is digital in this conversation? When you look at how agents operate today, and even the brokers, and even the insurtechs and peer-to-peer sales setups, most of them will have and will be enabled through digital platforms. When you come to what is purely a digital standalone environment, and from my experience, when you come to financial solutions, this hasn't perhaps been the most successful area where we then have significant uptick. It still seems to be an area where most people need to develop trust to then believe that I can get a financial service product digitally without any face-to-face interaction or without any, like a hybrid where you either have a telesales and so on and so forth. But we find that today's market, whether it is the banks or insurance or most of the financial services industry, have now leaned on heavily into being able to have portals, apps, and then we'll normally support that with outbound sales teams or what we'll call telesales, but this is mostly around building trust. Peer-to-peer sales engines are usually mostly supported by mobile applications just to help the customers on board. In insurtechs, there's usually be a lot to do with integration, APIs and partner portals just to make sure the process is effortless. For brokers, they leverage heavily on portals and mobile app. So at this stage, when it comes to conversion, and specifically because this is normally the moment of truth for business development professionals, digital becomes a critical enabler in ensuring that your conversion rates are where they should be. And unfortunately, when most people discuss business, and even if it was for any of us on this call, and I'll use an example, often when I speak to someone who's come up with a brilliant idea or a technology solution, this is often the area that they don't pay adequate attention to. How am I going to be able to get my customers onboarded? And therefore, one of the areas that I think is most critical. Digital creates certain efficiencies, but it therefore it provides certain efficiencies, and therefore has to benchmark with peers. For example, if anyone is going to be attempting digital onboarding, you then have to make sure that your channel is available 24/7. There's no option of having downtimes or an 8 to 5, because today's customer is then going to be comparing you with alternatives across the globe, and therefore channel availability has to be 24/7. The processes have to be paper light. I mean, they have to be extremely light. You're not looking at heavy documentation. And often a lot of professionals will tell you the biggest challenge in this area then becomes regulation, because the requirements continue to be quite heavy. I'll pick an example. Today, there's no financial services organization that's not required to comply with the Anti-Money Laundering Act. And this requires quite some heavy documentation on source of funds. But then this has to then be provided if there's going to be any successful onboarding for that customer. So the balance continues to be one that organizations today continue to work towards mastering. Onboarding has to be effortless. If a step is not required, then it really shouldn't be there. But at times we find that we will call it effortless onboarding inside out, but outside in, the customer feels that it is tedious. So exposing it to the customer for them to test it and be able to then tell you that this is honestly effortless becomes critical. Quick turnaround times that at any one point, because again, they're benchmarking you and they're almost used to an instant way of operating, that the TATs on delivery or responses have to be immediate. That whatever platform you have has to be interactive. And for anyone on the call who's working on a platform which you want to sell to an insurance company or you want to sell to a bank or you want to sell to be able to position to any customer, these are almost bare minimums because you're going to be benchmarking. It has to be responsive, it has to be interactive, and the customer then is able to have it interact with them even as they are making their decision. Remember, we are going back to the customer journey. They need to be, they're still in the consideration phase and being able to make a critical decision on this purchase, and therefore it needs to be responsive enough for them to walk them through the discovery journey. As we were going through the earlier journey on go-to-market, we spoke to the issue of customers' awareness on your product. Digital onboarding creates the ability for you to be able to be discovered easier online. And therefore, it should be easy for us to find whatever solution you're providing because it's available online. The other thing about when we go digital is around the product type. From my experience, and I think we've been experimenting with digital now, I think for 4 or 5 years, the value propositions of the products that you put on a digital platform have to be simple and have to be self-explanatory. So often, not every product will pass the test of being a digital product without the intervention of a telesales function or a face-to-face engagement, unless if it's a product that's simple. For example, you can borrow a mobile loan. That's a straightforward, simple value proposition, and the customer will be able to do it on their own. But once you begin to look at complexities, you have to go back and consider channels that then support the customer consideration journey right through to conversion. Most of them will need to be self-service. Once you introduce a customer to an online journey, you almost want to enable them to fully self-service. And for us, as insurance professionals, there's quite a bit of players today that are now have looked at how do you ensure customers are able to renew their covers, be able to make changes, or be able to self-service fully online without a physical location. And you want to be able to have instant validation. The beauty of today's market, we have IPRS, which enables you to have those integrations, and therefore the customer doesn't have to key in every single item. You can cross-reference that with M-Pesa and be able to have that as a digital signature. You have OTPs that then make that validation effortless and get off as the digital signature. The other thing about products that are often suitable for digital onboarding, as I've mentioned, they're simple, but you also want them to be customer-centric. For insurance, then that also implies, and also for banks, is that will be low-margin products because you want them to have a higher value to the customer to aid their consideration as they are making their decision. And the last thing for it is being able to have a product that has a journey that enables end-to-end purchase. So I've put on a dashboard some of the aspects that are extremely critical if you're going to, for anybody who is considering or has solutions that they're looking at with this particular area. So that for me, I've attempted to summarize what you really must consider if you want to be successful in business development. It is your markets. It is going to be your customer segments and being very thorough in making sure that you define those customers. It is your product strategy and coming up with a minimum viable product that you test and farm up, and then going to your go-to-market strategy, packaging it right, positioning it right, making sure you walk the customer, that your go-to-market strategy is addressing how they discover your product, walking them through even as they're trying to evaluate the product, and when they're ready to convert, making sure that it is an effortless conversion journey, it is an effortless onboarding journey. Channels will be different depending on the complexity of the product or the market that you're serving or the customer that you're serving. But for each of these aspects, it is as agile as always, starting with who is the customer, which is the market we're trying to serve, and everything else flows from there. Business development is at the very heart of the success of any business. Even for corporates, this is always going to be something that is always a consistent conversation. And therefore, for business development is the backbone of the success of that business. But even further, for an entrepreneur or for anyone who is thinking about opening their business, you really must consider your business development strategy at the very heart of what you do. Often it is said that you can have a very good low practice. You could have a very good, you could have any type of great product. But if you are not able to stick it to market right, and you're not able to get the customers onboarded, you really are not in business. You're busy. You're in busyness, not business. And therefore, I hope with that short conversation, we have been able to unpack some of the things I really hope you're able to consider as you go out to market, out to the business, and begin to consider business development. I'll spend about 5 or 10 minutes on corporate readiness, mostly because I like to believe that if you are corporate ready, as you go through and you study, and for even those who are already in corporate, this is always an area that we continue learning. I've been working for 19 years now, and there are always things that I'm learning even as we go. So I'll touch on some of the key things that I consider absolutely critical. So I'll give you a minute to look at that picture. And I don't know whether there are any reactions at the bottom. I'd want to see, what is it? What do you see as on the picture on the left and the picture on the right? Or rather, what are they? What immediately sticks out for you by just looking at that? And it's not a trick question. I just ask, what do you see? So I'll ask you to my next question. I hope you've had a chance to look at both teams, Team A and Team B. Who would you trust with your money and why? I'm interested in seeing in the comments, who would you trust with your money and why? Again, I'll take you back. Who would you trust with your money and why? I'm giving you a minute so that you have a chance to indicate, who would you trust with your money of the two that I indicated? And this is a question I like to ask a lot because in today's world, we are extremely liberated and there's a lot of views on what the market should consider a professional and what the market should consider not a professional. So the two groups, who will you consider with your money? And as you continue thinking through that, I want to introduce you to what I call brand me. Succeeding or getting ready for corporate is as attached to how you want to be perceived. What do you want people to see or experience when they meet you? Now, there are 3 channels that usually we communicate. And it's often said that everything communicates. Marketers tell us everything communicates. Our visual, that is how we look, how we speak, rather verbal, what we say, the content of what we are saying, and vocal, our voice. Each one of this is communicating. But what I find very, very interesting is the fact that 55% of first impressions are made by what we see. Hoping 55% of first impressions are made by what we see. So if I decide, over half of my decision is made by what I see, And another interesting 38% is said by what is positioned by what I say. Yeah, how am I speaking? My voice, my intonation, do I sound like I have good vocal ability? Do I sound confident? I hope you're getting it. So already, even before you get to know whether I'm smart or intellectual, or I'm an MBA, or I'm a fully certified actuary, whatever, before I even say a word, and you get to determine whether I'm smart or not by just looking at me and hearing the tone of my voice, you have already made up your mind as to whether you're going to do business with me or not. You have already made up your mind as to whether I'm someone worth your time or not. Often I find that this is something often underestimated in life, really, or as people step out into corporate, or even as people step out of their homes every day and determine how they want to be perceived. 55% is just how I look. 38% is whether I'm sounding confident, clear, articulate, and only 7% is actually what I say. Only 7% is my words. And that can tell you why con men are so successful. He dresses in a suit, he walks up to you very confidently, and you don't even care for the 7% that right, he doesn't even need to say much. You're already done and you're already conned. How then can you use this to play to your advantage as you step out every day and as you step out into corporate? Did you know that it communicates this much? Did you know that you've been communicating this much? I'm curious. When I learned this interesting science, one of the things that I always urge everyone around me to do is package yourself every day as you want to be perceived or how you want to be treated. As you walk into corporate, and I keep saying, and so just corporate, as to whether you're walking into corporate or whether you're going to open your own business, how you brand yourself is extremely critical for your success. How you position yourself for success is everything. So how are you dressed? Do you negotiate on how you look? Will you, you wouldn't go for a job interview in a t-shirt, I'd imagine, if it was in a bank. And you wouldn't go and position or pitch your business casually dressed. And incidentally, it never is a very expensive exercise, unlike people like to think. It is just a decision you make that this is brand me. This is me. This is how I want people to perceive me. So therefore, you wake up every day and you package yourself the way you want to be perceived. Even today, when you interact with your colleagues or your friends, or even just the people who are around you, how they already engage with you is based on how you package yourself, how you speak. Are you confident? Or is it when you come to introducing yourself, you already are shortchanging yourself? You want to sound like you have a tiny voice. You want to sound, I don't know, at times you want to sound combative. At times, you have to find, as you walk into corporate, brand me is extremely critical for your success. How you package yourself. And I don't care when you say, you know what, for our profession, we don't. I keep hearing, for my profession, we don't. For my profession, you don't. How about you walk into corporate? How about you walk into that business? And then once you're within that space, then find your normal. But once you're still outside, once you're still trying to get in, once you're still trying to grow yourself, at that time, don't position yourself at a disadvantage. Position yourself at an advantage by positioning yourself right. Dress the part, but also sound the part. Practice in front of the mirror. How do you speak? Do you speak confidently? Do you come across as somebody who people want to engage with? Do you sound confident? So then it deals a strong part for you. But brand me extends beyond our physical. If I was to check your WhatsApp profile picture right now, what would I find? If I was to check your LinkedIn picture, if I was to go to your Facebook wall, what would I find? If I was going to your Instagram, would I find a consistent brand me? Now, often people want to consider this trying to be a jacket, but I want to go back to the beginning. Are you trying to be successful? Are you trying to be successful? Because then you want to package yourself for success. And remove the corporates, your friends. Yeah, you want to position yourself. It's often said, I think Jim Rohn said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. That statement is dangerous because it almost begins to imply quite a bit about success. But when you come to brand me, you really want to make sure it's consistent. Who are you? How you package yourself, how you dress, how that you're smart. And I have no doubt in your mind that you know your stuff. But everything else needs to match up. Because as you walk into corporate, it is such a critical factor as to how you are perceived. Even if you do get through the door and get to that job, your chances of continuing to grow, your chances of continuing to be successful are extremely critical on how you continue to package yourself. There's a joke I like to use, and you've seen me use it in the picture I've attached, as you can see, where I like to make fun of the ladies, where usually told the length of your skirt will say whether you are a go-getter, whether you're cautious, you're traditional, or you're generally a risk taker. But we can definitely tell the level of your skirt that says you're unemployed. So I hope that, and this is just an easy way to show that just simple things that we don't think are really communicating have a big implication on whether people take you seriously or not. And the other thing about getting yourself ready for corporate is making yourself an asset. I don't need to define to you what an asset is, but an asset has value. So I'll highlight some critical things that you really must consider if you're going to be corporate ready, but also growth ready. Because getting in is one thing. You could be at entry level position, even as we're having this conversation and wondering, how do I grow beyond where I am? Beyond that point, how you continue to grow is extremely hinged to whether you make yourself an asset. Often, I've sat in interviews where I've had people say, how much are you going to give me? Are you going to take me for training? How much are you offering me? That is all well and good. But like in every situation, including your own personal decisions, you will not put money behind something that is not demonstrating value. And the same goes for the corporate world. What makes it even more cutthroat is increasingly it is tighter. Whatever can be automated has been automated. So it's leaner structures, more competitive structures. So becoming an asset is extremely critical as to whether you get that job and grow, or as to whether your business actually succeeds. So you're really going to have to look at whether you are demonstrating value and not just one-off. It is consistent. So the first thing is you have to be a value creator. Being a value creator, you have to look at your environment and ask yourself, what is value defined as here? In different organizations, value is defined differently. So in your organization or in your sphere of work, what is value defined as? When you speak to architects, you could do a beautiful design, but perhaps the market or the customers today are willing to look at great designs, but are also demonstrate cost savings. So is that now what is defined as value? In that case, that is where you sharpen your skill set towards. Once you identify what value is, deliver like a pro. Your work must be high quality. You have to be reliable. And I said some of the things I'll say sound pretty obvious, but it's important to repeat for emphasis. The other thing is you need to manage up. If you're going to be working in corporate, you need to manage up. One of the things that one of my biggest rules has always been to make my boss look good. My boss is always looking good because my work is really good in terms of my outputs, make them look good, then they work very hard to make sure I stay. And they work very hard to make sure I'm still growing. So often it is not about sucking up. And I think we have to differentiate the two. It's about value, creating value and delivering value. Whatever is value is ideally normally consistent. If for your boss and your company will be consistent, that's how you know it's not about bootlicking. No, it is about what is value creation for the company and what is value creation for your supervisor, and then make them look good. Then keep growing. It got you there, you arrived, you are probably in the first, at your interview, you made them think of you as an excellent guru and you're actually good at it, but you have to continue sharpening your skill set. Keep making yourself better. Never arrive, because you're only as valuable to that organization or that client you're serving as an entrepreneur for as long as you are adding value. And if you retain a certain level of value, you exhaust your value, there's nothing else that you can offer them, And sooner or later, they'll move on to next. That's business. Nothing personal. It's just business. And the other area in being a value creator is be very self-aware. Be extremely self-aware. Who am I? What makes me tick? How do I perform? What are my strengths? And this is both professionally and personally. What is my drama? Because at times some of us, we know our issues. Yeah, we get angry quickly, so that you can then be able to work on your emotional intelligence, and it then makes you leverage on your strengths, address your weaknesses. But you really have to be an expert of you. You have to know you, because nobody else will know you very well. So you have to know, how do I respond to criticism? Maybe I'm told something and I lash back at people, so that you become an expert at you. So be a value creator by delivering excellent work, being reliable. When you say you'll do it, please get it done. No follow-ups. And I want to insist on this, because people like to say, my boss is too this or that. Please, the danger with that is you're replaceable. That's a hard truth. Theirs is to get somebody who will get it done. And even if your boss is swapped, the next one will come and demand the same things. They want you to be reliable. They want you to deliver. And they want you to continue adding value at every touch point. The other thing for me around being an asset is professionalism. It doesn't matter what people tell you, but professionalism never goes out of fashion. And I'll tell you some of the basic things that keep you as a professional. Personal branding, we have spoken to it. How you brand yourself, how you position yourself, how you dress, how you speak, how you write your emails. I dare say your email etiquette. If you want to write emails in capital letters, if you want to write an SMS in capital letters, one of the biggest traps you really have to avoid, and I've had to draw the line, is if I'm going to be typing SMSs into Taonana in two and isn't in the numbers, then how does my mind then switch back to writing in normal English? Yeah, because that is where the money is. That is where my success lies. Look, you can convince me in only one. Wherever you are, you're working very hard to be a professional or to do very well in that business, because you're trying to make money and to be a success. So you don't want to be doing things that are sabotaging your success. So what is my communication like? Be punctual. And usually for me, this is one basic thing I was taught from a very early stage in my career, is always arrive 10 minutes late, 10 minutes early. Always log into meetings 10 minutes earlier. If the meeting is starting at 8 and you arrive at 8, you're already late. Arrive in advance, because then it helps you in being punctual. As I've already said, keep your word. I can't underestimate the aspect of email etiquette and so on. And the other area that I'm extremely passionate about is avoid groupthink. We work with people. We live with people. We are in school with people. And the one thing about being with many people is at times the crowd wants you to be one of them. So when there's coming up with a decision, or I often see it at times, even at work, where you'll see younger guys coming up with a conversation, or people get into hearts and start saying, this company is not good, this company is not that, this person is not this, and it begins to impact how I behave. And it begins to impact on my delivery. And it begins to impact on my thinking. Now, it is unfortunate that mediocrity likes company. So you have to be able to ask yourself, remember, you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. Who am I spending time with? And for corporate readiness, you really must avoid groupthink. You really must be the kind of person who evaluates issues and decisions objectively. Otherwise, groupthink is the one very most common aspect that keeps people either at entry level or exiting and always having issues with underperformance. You want to stand up as an individual and stand out because of your ability to think independently and grow independently. Remember, as you're getting into corporate, as you're succeeding in that business, you won't walk in holding hands with 10 people. You'll be alone. The same way with your success. And the same way with when you are successful, you'll also find that other successful people don't walk in herds, or don't work in herds, or don't think in herds. Consult, look for ideas, but the final decision is yours. As I wind up, the other thing is raise your hand at every opportunity. Even today, raise your hand, volunteer, say, I can do more. When you get an extra set of work, I can do more. This is one thing that has personally really worked for me, where at every opportunity where I think, well, I could do that. And remember, I'm still growing my mind. I'm still stretching my ability to do more. So I'm always able to do more. I'm always developing capacity to do newer things. So I'm always going to be raising my hand and saying, I can do more. When there's a conversation being held, again, as Njeri, I'm offering to do that. Oh, yes, I have an idea around that, and this is what I'm thinking. So raise your hand. And the last thing for me in corporate readiness, get ready to pay it forward. I'm a product of people who've poured out to me, or people who have reached out to, who I have grown on the wealth of their experience, and I've grown on the wealth of what they have experienced. This session organized this morning, this afternoon, is another opportunity for you to learn. Once you learn and tomorrow you are a success, and my prayer for you is that you are a success and that we do meet and you're extremely successful, that you also pay it forward. You always have something that you can teach somebody else. You always have something that you can coach somebody else. There's someone who's not where you are. There's someone you've probably come from a difficult background. Great. Most of us have. What can you teach the person who's going through a challenging time right now? What is it that you can tell that child in primary school today who's probably where you were a couple of years back, and continue paying forward? So at least we are consistently helping each other deal with the obstacles a bit easier based on the experiences, because we've had the opportunity to go ahead. And remember, for me, as you, in whatever you choose to do, and in your endeavors today, you have to go wholeheartedly into anything in order to achieve anything worth having. So as you are, whatever stage you're at, whether you're still in campus, whether you're already in employment, I hope that from our discussion this afternoon, that there has been something that you have learned that you're going to use, and that at the end of the day, that you consider all of these aspects earlier on business development, when making sure that you understand this very critical discipline that cuts across any kind of business you do, and also that you are ready for corporate by making yourself an asset and being very deliberate about being someone who offers value. And with that, I want to take any questions before I throw my last challenge to everyone on this call. I want to ask that from everything we have discussed this afternoon, what are 3 things that you will change or implement from today? It's one thing for us to talk. And everyone, you could keep asking someone, send me 1,000, send me 5,000, but it's life-changing if you succeed. It's life-changing that if you as an individual succeed. So what are 3 things that you will change or implement from our discussion today? And how will you use them to make you better? And there's one more exercise I want us to leave you with. I want you to write for me your introduction 5 years from now. I want you to write something, what it can be a paragraph or 2. Introduce yourself to me 5 years from now. How people will be introducing you in meetings, in conferences, in key places. How will people be introducing you 5 years from now? Write out that bio. And my one rule of thumb is education should be the last item on that bio, because education is one thing. What you do with that education is what really I get to see as who you are and what is value. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for your time. And my challenge to all of us, as I pray, and my hope and my belief is that you will be a person of value. And I look forward to seeing you at the top. Back to you, Livingston.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have some questions here. Dominic is asking, now that every business is shifting online, what are some of the competitive advantages to surviving in the digital market?
Thank you for that question, Dominic. Yes, every business is shifting online, but I keep seeing shifting online and succeeding online are 2 different things. Shifting online and succeeding online are 2 different things. Remember, it goes back to everything we've discussed. Who's your customer? What markets are you trying to serve? How well do you understand that customer? Because remember, digital is only an enabler. So everything you are doing offline, you will do online. So competitive advantages go back to how well do I understand my customer? How responsive is my product to this customer? Okay, and how do I help them walk through the decision-making journey so that they end up having converted? So that is where I see the competitive advantage in being able to understand that digital is in fact an enabler. And that enabler is actually what helps you to actually succeed. So you'll apply the same disciplines you have just on a digital platform. And remember, the one thing with digital is you really, really must be on your A game, because the client has a chance to compare you with a lot of different people, a lot of world-class type businesses. So you really have to do a good job. So make sure that you understand your market, you understand your customer, make sure the communication fits the segment. I would be selling to anyone on campus online. I mean, it's really where you do spend your time. So that is where I'd definitely be pitching. So for you to be competitive, understand your customer, get the product right, get the communication right, and make sure when they are ready to purchase or when they're ready to sign up, that it's actually effortless for them to do so. I see another question from Ronald Okumu. Could you speak into the role of AI in supporting financial institutions in digital strategy? Ronald, that's a good question. I spoke to it even right from the beginning. AI is important in helping us understand our customers intricately, whether potential new customers or existing customers. I'll give you an example of one of the ways we are currently using AI. When we look at the customer retention, which remains a major challenge for any business, and more specifically for insurance, we then ask ourselves, how can we define the kind of customer who right from the onset we should be targeting, because they have characteristics that suggest they're likely to stay, and that can only be achieved through AI. So we leverage on data. One, being able to we leverage heavily on data analytics to be able to inform our target customer markets and how we service them. But AI also informs us, speaks to their behavior. Where are they? What are they spending their time with? So it then improves our targeting, it improves our approach, it improves our products, it improves our servicing as well. So AI has a key area in every single touch point for the customer. Any other questions?
I think that's the last one. Probably you are crossing the marks as we edge to the end of the session.
Okay, my closing remarks, and I think I've put a challenge. I'm looking forward to those 5-year introduction bios. I want to see how you introduce yourself, because I want to see how big your aspirations are. Where are you seeing yourself going? Where are you seeing yourself getting to? Yes, I want to see how you introduce yourself. I can introduce myself to you. Livingstone can send you my bio and tell you this is who Njeri is, but that has taken 19 years for me to build. I want you to be deliberate about building yours, because you have what it takes, but you also have to be very clear. If I'm going to be building up to birds being this and this and that, then it's going to demand this and this from me. But I believe that if you start now, and from my experience, you're going to get it right, and you should get it right. So regardless of whether you're going into business or whether you're going into corporate, you have to be able to look at all of these aspects and ask yourself, how do they add value for me? Because at the end of the day, there's a customer. For corporate, there's the corporate customer. For the entrepreneur, there is your personal business customer, and the disciplines remain the same. So I look for, and I wish you the very best. And with my hope and my intention, as I said, is I look forward to seeing you at the top. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Njeri, for participating in this session. Have you really been within time? And thank you for keeping time. What I usually tell the young professionals, teach yourself to keep time. It's part of success. Thank you for keeping your time. You were here 15 minutes before time. So thank you very much. I want to wish you all the best. And thank you for mentoring our youth, what you have been doing through the Office of the President. We believe we are also able to reach more and more and be able to change the world. Mine from here is to wish you all the best and welcome you to our next session and another session, so that we are able to learn from different professionals, get to know what we can do to make our world better. Without much ado, I'll only welcome you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our page, and follow our discussions. Yeah. Thank